till the hour. Shall we get started, with our Sunrise Toastmasters meeting this week? I hope everyone is doing well. Okay, starting to get some nice weather all around the world, so around the country at least, so great to know about that. I found a little thought for today that I really liked. And I wish I knew how better to pronounce his name or someone's name, but it's from Baruch Spinoza. And he said, if you want the present to be different from the past, study the past. Something to think about. Study the past. I was never much of that. I was always about the biology and the things, but still, something to think about. With that, I'll turn it over to our president, George Kleeb. George, please, start us off.
Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to Sunrise Toastmasters for this beautiful Friday morning. Gil, we have a couple of guests in the room. Would you please introduce your guest?
Yes. So would be on your left on the screen is Angela Browning, and she's the business manager for the Elko Community Health Center, which is a fascinating surgery center here in Elko. I got a chance to tour it and I was quite impressed. Next to her is her friend and my daughter, Jennifer Fuentes. And so we want to welcome them to the meeting.
Our first speaker is Gil Sargent. Gil grew up in South Dakota and moved to Casper, Wyoming when he was 12. He moved to Elko in 1983 because of an oil bust in Wyoming. He has worked in and around mining for 41 years and first joined Toastmasters in 2017. He rejoined our club in January of this year and is working on a level 1 project in Pathways. Pathways is a speaking program that we follow. His speech title is Best Speaking, Better Listening. This assignment was to give a speech, receive feedback, and now re-give the speech to improve. This is the second time he's given this speech, so we're going to be looking at his speech as how did he implement. There's one thing in his introduction that is missing. Gil also is an author. He has written a book called The Little Black Book of Supervision, and it is still on Amazon today. I have a box of these books in my supply cabinet, and when I have student engagement, when I have students that are in a group project as a gift, I give them this book. So please help me welcome Gil Sargent.
Thank you. Good morning, fellow Toastmasters, and good morning, guests. How are we doing this morning? So I did grow up in South Dakota, in Deadwood, South Dakota, in the Black Hills of South Dakota. Yes, Deadwood of Wild Bill Hickok and George Armstrong Custer fame. Ironically, after living in Nevada for the past 41 years, I actually grew up in a place called Nevada Gulch. It's a small area just miles away from a mining town of Lead, South Dakota. Off the road to Lead, there's a turn you can take onto Highway 473 that meanders along to Terry Peak, a ski resort in northern Black Hills. Terry Peak was named after General Alfred Howe Terry, who had explored the region and was Custer's commanding officer. That road then veers into two roads, Terry Gulch and Nevada Gulch. If you take the Nevada Gulch Road, you'll find it to be a narrow, 2-lane road running between two large mountain ridges. As you looked up into the bright sky, the narrow ribbon of blue was bordered by towering rows of wondrous green pine trees. I can remember laying in the field next to our house, flat on my back, looking up through the trees at the wisps of clouds as they floated by, watching how they continually changed shapes and formations, all the while my mind wandering in and out of focus. Suddenly I would remember that I started out cloud watching, and I'd realize that the previous frame had been blown away into the next county and an entirely new canvas had been painted. Along the roadway of Nevada Gulch ran Nevada Gulch Creek, or the Crick, it was known in the dialogue of my youth, the hare and the tortoise. I spent the prime of my childhood, ages 7 to 12, in Nevada Gulch. I call it prime because at that age, you are without serious responsibility. Your imagination is powerful, and you're still innocent enough to allow your thoughts to take many turns into fascinating places. You don't realize it until after it happens, but at some point after this age, you're forced into the obligations of responsibility, and you rarely exercise the pleasant journeys paved by your imagination quite the same way ever again. In the bright, blinding sunlight and heat of those fabulous summer days in Nevada Gulch, my brother Bart and I would join up with our friends who also lived in the Gulch, and we would wander away from our houses and travel along the banks of the creek. We would play in the mud, sifting the fine brown sand through our fingers. We would have mud fights, smearing muddy hands all over each other's faces, ultimately taking it too far, with someone either getting hurt physically or emotionally. We would travel together down the road, having to step off the road on occasion to let passing vehicles go by, probably in more danger than we ever really realized. We would walk the 2 miles to the Cavern Club, no, not the one of the rock group, the Beatles fame, but instead a bar that someone had built out of an abandoned gold mine. In those days, a youngster could walk into a bar and get a cold soda pop if you happen to have a nickel, an event rare enough in my family to make it an event unto itself. As soon as you walked into the mine tunnel, you would feel the relief from the summer heat, now suddenly cooling down to a wonderfully comfortable and welcoming temperature. Once inside the mine, you would walk about 50 feet through the dark mine tunnel toward the light of the bar. I can still envision how little light there was as we came out of the bright sunshine into the tunnel, only lit up by some of the colored neon signs of my youth, including Pabst Blue Ribbon, the name in itself telling you of its award-winning pedigree, and Ham's Beer from the land of sky blue waters, and Schlitz, which proudly proclaimed that when you're out of Schlitz, you're out of beer, the ant and the grasshopper. Though you were focusing on the lights of the bar up ahead, you would feel and smell the wonderful, encompassing, cool dampness in the air. And finally, when you reached the bar, you would climb up onto a bar stool, which for a youngster can seem like ascending a watchtower. It was then time to do the most adult thing you could do at 8 years old: order a cool drink while sitting on a bar stool in a bar. I would always order 7-Up, and never since that time has soda ever tasted so good or felt so cold and refreshing. It was simply a wonderful experience that continually finds its way back into my thoughts. I've just told you a part of the story of my youth growing up in Nevada Gulch. I tried to take care to paint a colorful picture for each of you. Are there any among you that found that the story of my youth triggered a childhood memory of yours? While telling a story, it's important for me to remember that at any given moment, I am competing for each listener's attention. Sometimes a listener will be triggered by something they hear, and their mind detours into an inner monologue, a discussion with oneself. Have you ever been driving and pulled up to your house or the store and realized you can't remember the last several turns you took? Chances are you are experiencing an inner monologue, a one-sided conversation in your mind concerning an event of interest that has taken the place of what you should be paying attention to. Here's a challenge to illustrate my point. Next time a song you really like comes on the radio, try and force yourself to listen to the end. I'll bet you at the end of the song you'll not even be listening anymore, but rather your mind will wander off into the events of your day. My inner monologue is very strong and is triggered typically by several things. One, something a speaker has said has triggered a memory of mine, or they have triggered my need to formulate a response to them, or I start running through the list of things I have to get done that day. There was a good example of this a couple of weeks ago during Carol's speech. Something she said triggered my inner monologue, yet Carol soon shocked me back into the present when she mentioned the option of nuclear war. I thought I would try to trigger your inner monologue this morning and after a few descriptive passages, I threw out the titles of 3 children's fables. While listening to my story, did anyone happen to miss the title of the fables that I mentioned? I mentioned The Hare and the Tortoise, The Boy Who Cried Wolf, and The Ant and the Grasshopper. If so, is it possible that you are engaged in an inner monologue of your own? Many times when listening to others, we find ourselves distracted and not present in the moment. Avoiding this is what it takes to be an active listener. Each of the fables I shared ends with a moral to the story. The hare and the tortoise, slow and steady wins the race. The boy who cried wolf, a liar is never believed even when they speak the truth. And the ant and the grasshopper, work hard today to get ready for tomorrow. Each of us here has a goal to improve as speakers and storytellers, and so with your help, I will continue to work on these skills, especially my storytelling skills. And when not speaking, I will be working hard to improve my ability to stay present and resist surrendering to my inner monologue. And so let me leave you with the moral of my story here this morning. Toastmasters, when you endeavor to improve in the company of these people, you will never travel alone. Thank you.
Thank you, Gil.